are live talking about the end of the world, ironically enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, we're not already living through the end of the world or anything. But yeah, this is the first of a couple discussions that we're doing where we're just going over episodes that we skipped way back when we talked about series 1 and 2. We skipped a couple for, I'm not sure what reason. I think for these two that we're talking about today, my main reasoning was just that I found them really unmemorable and I didn't have much to say about them, so why revisit them? That ended up being true for at least half of these. I know Rob already mentioned he found both of these episodes really mediocre. I'm very mixed.
I do think they kind of serve their purpose well enough. They're kind of just to sort of introduce Rose to traveling in the future and past and everything, and I actually like how they handle that stuff. But as far as the stories themselves, this series is still, at this point, saving the real meaty stuff for later on. I think this series only really starts to kick in properly when they get to Dalek. You can argue Aliens London, but it's a bit more of an uneven story than some of the ones later on in the series. These early episodes feel like they're just sort of, getting the ground running, and that's pretty much all there is to them.
I feel like The End of the World is a more interesting episode than it's given credit for. I do think, and like something Brianna and I agreed on, like across both of these episodes, is you can really feel the sense that they had not quite worked out yet what kind of show this is. That extends to the score. Like Murray Gold's score in The End of the World especially is like, oh man, you really were not sure what sound you wanted this show to have early in series 1, and it shows.
Yeah, I was just going to mention like it's really awkward like how bad the score is, which is weird because it gets so good. There's moments that are really good, but sometimes it sounds like a Casio keyboard. It's weird.
I think the worst fitting score for me in series 1 is Boomtown. We haven't really gotten to that episode yet. The score in Boomtown is just horrific. I think the music in The End of the World is actually at least kind of fitting with the episode, so I don't really mind it too much.
Yeah, Robert and Danny weren't there for that one, but we have talked about Boomtown.
Boomtown, it's okay. It's slightly more interesting than these two episodes because I do like what they do with the characters in that, and the whole stuff with the Margaret Slitheen I think is well handled. The Rose Mickey stuff is interesting. It's not the most interesting story, but it's kind of a nice sort of breather before the finale, and it's okay.
I'm thinking what's the ones where they first show up to the Sabine?
The Alien to London, World War III.
Alien to London?
Yeah, that's the ones I'm thinking. Yeah, but sometimes it's kind of meh. I just want to say, I think this episode is a bit underrated. I don't think it's amazing or anything, but I do think it's like a good like first companion out episode, and I think it worked fairly well. The only part that really bothered me was the end with like the machine, which Wesley Davis has this weird thing having like machines that would never like work in the real world.
Unbelievable how the Doctor actually just managed to walk through that last thing.
One masochistic designer decided to make a failsafe behind massive propellers that will chop you into pieces within seconds unless somebody else is pulling a lever on the other side.
Something out of a video game.
It's like the Spencer Mansion from Resident Evil. Like,
yes, that was the one part of the episode I just thought was really ridiculous and silly. And like it reminded me, like I said, of when the 10th Doctor died, because they had another ridiculous machine where someone has to hold it down.
We'll get to that in due time.
Oh, the end of time. It's interesting watching this because I watched Rose along with the watch along, the Twitter watch along things they were doing, and watching this soon afterwards, I begin to realize that Russell T Davies really this is kind of beginning of his, for lack of a better term, style, because a lot of his kind of aphorisms are here. There's really silly social commentary in there. There's the cast of thousands of little mini characters who all have their own little character quirks and personalities, and distinguishing between one or two different characters that kind of stand out and stuff. The melodrama, which he kind of loves indulging in, and I think he really loves doing high science fiction stakes with complementing low kind of character stakes. And there's a lot of stuff I actually did really like. I found Rose to be pretty tolerable in this one. I don't find her really annoying until series 2. I like how she has that kind of reaction to the fact that she just kind of ran into this adventure and has no real, emotional understanding of what she's getting into, and kind of taking in the weight of watching the literal world explode down below her. That's really effective. That's really good character stuff. I really like that final scene between her and Eccleston. I think the one thing I will say about series 1 is not a series I'm particularly fond of, but Eccleston's so good in this role, and it's a shame that we'll never say never, but we'll probably likely never see him in this part again. But for what we get of him, he just gives it his all, and because he's somebody who can exude a lot of pathos without saying much, which works great for the Ninth Doctor considering his story arc. The plot with it's Russell T Davies' weird embezzlement schemes, which is a plot he does a lot in the first series. Yeah,
it's like every episode, every single villain in series 1 is motivated by money. And I never actually noticed it until Mr. TARDIS pointed it out in one of his videos. But once you actually notice it, it's like,
it's really hard.
That's a bit lazy, isn't it? Like every single villain is motivated by money.
I noticed it like from like the very beginning. I noticed that like at the very beginning. I said it's always money, isn't it? And I noticed that also because like when I used to like write fan fictions and stuff, that would be my go-to. Anytime when a writer does something that I put in a fan fiction, I automatically go, "Oh, they must suck because I suck."
Don't do that.
Well, they're very amateurish and generic because, you know.
I mean, it could be worse. You could be complaining about it being too political.
Yeah.
Oh, true. I would never have a problem with Doctor Who.
Russell T Davies is ridiculously political, actually. I think he's worse than any of the 3 showrunners. In terms of like production, I actually look at those spider things look really good considering they're from like 15 years ago. That effect still really holds up.
I agree with that with the exception of one scene. There's the scene where they're like at the blue guy who's got like the thing in his forehead, a lower angle shot of one of the robots, and it looks ludicrously bad even for the time.
Are you talking about the scene with the steward? Because I thought a couple of times in that scene it looked like it was they were in a CGI room. Really took me out of it.
I was looking at the spider, which why are they called spiders when they don't have 8 legs? But
because
whatever.
Cassandra knows nothing.
Like actually one thing that really held up, even though I think like Cassandra's kind of a generic brouhaha, the concept behind her is kind of fun, and I think the actress really sells it. I really love how messed up her death is, even though I don't think it really fits tonally with the rest of what happens in the episode, and they don't do it in series 2. But it was actually that moment in of itself is actually really dark, and I really like that.
Okay, I actually want to talk a lot about Cassandra, but first I just want to like carry on some points that Daniel's already brought up. One, I do empathize with Rose like way more than I usually do in this episode. And this ties into, again, like you said, the last scene, why I think the last scene like recontextualizes this whole episode, because the Doctor has this line that like pretty much confirms what I assumed throughout the episode, which is he knew how extreme it would be to go from like an adventure on modern day Earth to the end of the planet. All of these aliens that Rose would have no familiarity with, and like we see on her face how uncomfortable she is, how out of her element she feels. Brianna actually brought up a good point, which is like the blue lady, that like of course that's the one person that Rose talks to because it's the one person there who looks almost human. Like everyone else looks ridiculous, and she's just a person but blue. Even the other blue guy has like the weird thing in the forehead.
Rose said it right. All the aliens are so alien. They're so weird.
But the fact that she's a plumber also is meant to sort of back to reality, like realize, okay, some things are still, the same.
You see that in the Inquiet Dead as well. She kind of attaches herself to the more underclass people because she can relate to them more than kind of they're these rich, aristocratical alien figures. So that's kind of consistent character trait, which is nice. I don't know if it continues for the rest of the series because I haven't seen the rest of the series for a while, but that was really cool.
Also, it kind of shows in a good way that even if these aliens look really, really weird, we all have something in common.
I get the impression that the Doctor was like, I'm gonna take you completely out of your element in every way possible, like your planet is gone. That was a taste of what like traveling with me is like. Are you actually ready for this? And I like that at the end she's like, I don't know. It's like, what do you want? Do you want to stick around? She's like, I'm really not sure. I felt kind of bad for having skipped this one because it was like, no, this is really sort of perfect as their first actual trip together after you've introduced people to the concept of the show.
I mean, also, I'd be totally down for more adventures. I'd be like, yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, that could not be me.
I mean, just from my own perspective, there's a lot of tonal weird in the episode for me. That happens a lot without Davies' scripts. And the ending is really, really stupid. The climax, not the actual ending with Annert. But yeah, this is a really serviceable story. There's a lot of good character beats. I actually was surprisingly moved by Rose calling her mom. I think that worked really well. I really like the actress who plays Jackie, so it's always good to see her pop up.
Even though I think that scene was another one where the score was weird.
The score is really bizarre in this.
Don't they just play Rose's theme over that scene?
I love Rose's theme, but they play like this weird variation of it that doesn't sound right. right.
And that's also another one of those scenes where they swing between like mentor relationship.
Okay, we're gonna talk about this more in the next episode because, like, Lucy, I concede that I was a complete moron in regards to how Rose and Nine's relationship is coded, and I'm convinced that the reason that happened is because we skipped the Unquiet Dead. And, like, we'll talk about it more with that episode, but that episode starts, and I'm like, these two want to mount each other so bad.
I've been telling you this for years.
It's really uncomfortable. Say what you want about Rose and Ten's relationship, but at least that gets consistent. Like, across these two episodes, and like across series 1 as a whole, Rose and Nine have this constant thing where in some scenes they clearly want to just like get it on, and then in other scenes he feels like her father, and it's really, really weird, and it skeeves me out.
It at least isn't as in your face as the Rose and Ten stuff, and it doesn't happen as consistently as in series 2.
There's an abandoned subplot where the Doctor was supposed to have forged Rose to be his perfect companion.
Oh, God.
Thankfully, they got rid of that.
Brianna and Eden don't know about this. It's going to be like an implication in the Empty Child episodes, I think, or it's like some episode was going to imply, if not like outright confirm, that the Doctor had like gone through Rose's entire childhood and like set events in motion to make her the perfect companion.
There seems to be a joking reference to it in a Matt Smith episode where he talks about going to 6-year-old Rose Tyler to help with her homework.
The little bit line in the Empty Child episode where she's like, "You're not Santa Claus," and he's like, "Who says I'm not?" Red Bicycle when you were 12. That was supposed to be part of that.
No.
No, God! No, God, please, no!
Somebody took Russell T Davies aside and told him that was a stupid idea, please stop, and they never did it.
They were just friends, it would be fine, but they're actually like in love. Wesley T. Davis literally says that Rose is the Doctor's girlfriend.
Very glad that did not come to fruition because that's just incorrect. That's wrong.
Why has the Doctor never mentioned Rose for like the past 7 seasons?
Outside the Day of the Doctor, when they actually got the actor back, they just never really bring her up at all, except for like once or twice.
Yes, and even then she plays a totally different part. It's like Malcolm's like, I don't want any of this romance. With River, it's fine. With an older woman, it's fine. But with a teenage girl, no.
We sort of got into that because like we started comparing the Doctor and Rose to like Jeff and Annie on Community.
If any of you guys watch Community.
That's another show where like that romance has a big age difference, and like they're constantly pointing it out. Like the show is consistently like weird.
My thing about the age difference isn't so much the real life age difference. It's more of he's like thousands of years old. Like there's lots of people that accidentally meet at weird points in their lives.
Being that old, I don't understand how you don't consider everyone your like kind of child.
He's a super powerful alien. Like conceptually, prospectively, human beings may as well be pets to him, in terms of the advancement.
Again, the moment with Rose in the beginning of that episode where you're just like watching Cassandra and like the rest of them go like, this is an ostrich egg and ostriches were breathing fire and like this is a jukebox but actually it's an iPod, and Rose is just it pans to her face and she's standing in the back and you can literally see her going, like, what the hell's going on? Like
that iPod joke did not age very well.
I do also want to talk about the scene with the Doctor and Rose like arguing right before she calls her mom. That was a really good conversation. That scene was really cool because I'm always doing this thing that like no one else does, and I'm just a weirdo where I'm constantly always thinking of the show like retroactively. And so like I'm thinking of certain lines of dialogue in the context of where we're at right now. So when Rose is like trying to probe him, it's like, who are you? Where are you from? He's like, it doesn't matter. Who I am is like, all that matters is right here, right now, and what I'm doing in the moment. Like that's really interesting to think about post-series 12, where the Doctor is always like consistently from series 1 through like where we are right now, always sort of like pretending to be this live in the moment person, even though they're using it really as an excuse to just run away from their past. And like Chibnall being in charge of the show right now, he has that great monologue in The Power of Three, where he's like, I'm not running from things, I'm running to things. before they like flare out and like go away forever. I think Chibnall has a very specific view of the Doctor as a person that's different from what Russell and Moffat do. Russell and Moffat consistently are like, why does the Doctor always have to be like rushing to the next thing? Why is it always next thing, next thing, next thing, live in the moment? Because they're running from personal trauma. And so, like, the Doctor says all that matters is right here, right now. He doesn't really mean that, because as he says those words, he's, like, stuck in the time war and not over it. And, like, I don't think they ever fully get over it. And any Doctor could say that, and I wouldn't believe them until after Series 12. Like, if you gave the 13th Doctor that line of dialogue, I would believe that she means it in a way that I wouldn't believe from any of the other ones.
That's a good point.
But she's right back where she was.
Right back where she was what?
Well, I mean, she's like last of her kind again, so she's just repeating the same stuff again.
No, but like we specifically end Series 12, and like the crux of that series is that doesn't matter. Like all the stuff and the trauma that you've suffered does not matter. What matters is what you choose to do in your personal present.
Well, that's more about like past Doctors, not so much like her people being gone.
We don't really talk about that much at all. It's just kind of a thing that happened.
Time Lords massively suck, so...
Yeah, honestly, I don't think they're going to be too missed this. Do we really need to bring the Time Lords back? They weren't all that great, let's be honest.
Yeah, they aren't that great either.
The Time Lord stuff is like literally the worst thing about Hellbent, to the point where I actually was glad that the episode did not focus on them. The way they brought Rassilon back in particular was just absolutely just poorly done.
It's amazing he has only appeared 3 times in the entirety of Doctor Who on the TV, and every single time significantly weaker and significantly more lame every single appearance. Yeah. In the 5 Doctors, he turned somebody to stone in a coma. He was that powerful.
No, it's not a coma. They stay there forever, I think, constantly just living while
a time coma, whatever.
I'm just gonna say I will never be approving of just do the same thing we did before but water down the supernatural approach.
Word.
Let's talk about Cassandra, because this is like my big sticking point to the episode, and like this is the thing that Brianna and I talked about the most, which is I like Rose more than usual in this episode. The one moment where I really like am not sure I agree with her is when she's talking to Cassandra and she's like, "You're not even human anymore." Do we consider Cassandra a human being? The way that I think about it is like, imagine in the purely hypothetical scenario that like right now in 2020, someone suffered this really terrible accident and they had to get all their organs removed and their nose or whatever, and miraculously they managed to survive as like a stretch of skin. Totally impossible, but imagine it happened. Do you go up to the person and say, "You're not a human being anymore"?
Nah. I think Rose said that in response to Cassandra's attitude towards the other humans.
Yeah,
also partly out of anger because she was like, I think she still felt like out of place.
Cassandra is just sort of the apex of like how different everything is, and Rose can't process it. So like I don't want to imply that Rose is or should have been like objective, because clearly everything is different. She sees this like last human being alive, and it's like not anything that she would recognize as a human from 2005. She just is not mentally equipped to immediately accept that. But as like outside viewers, I think of Cassandra as a human being.
It's easy for a 19-year-old girl to put down an older woman for getting too much plastic surgery.
Much older woman.
Yeah, that's the whole thing with the Shibboleths, where if you keep on repairing something, does it stay the same because you've ruined everything else already about it? Yeah, it's funny enough because like the first thing I thought of is like the Cybermen, who are technically humans from a twin planet. That's how they started off, and there's also the alternate universe who get cybernetically augmented to become Cybermen. Are they technically still human?
You know what? That's a good comparison.
If you are able to get stretched into a piece of skin that has no like visible lungs, vocal cords, brain, listen, whatever they did to you to make that possible, genetically speaking, you are probably not a human anymore.
Because like I think there's a difference between what you can do to your body physically and like genetics, because Cassandra has this like throwaway sort of like eugenics line where she's like, there are sort of other humans around, but they intermingle. So like race mixing with other species. I think it's interesting because if you were going to say purely physiologically that if Cassandra is or isn't a human, then yes, the exact same thing applies to the Cybermen. Because the Cybermen are human brains with just their entire body is prosthesis. If you're saying philosophically, I think Cassandra is human and the Cybermen are not, because Cassandra, like Lucy said, has consciousness, she has emotion, she's driven in some way by human desires, like vanity is a very human thing. Money. Cassandra, to the extent that she can, lives the human experience, and Cybermen just are not capable of that.
I mean, look at all the cosmetic surgery. She's getting her blood bleached. That was a really funny line.
And see, like, this is great because I think you're having the thing that Rose has, which is obviously, like, we can only speak from the perspective of people living in the 21st century.
You can't ask this question to any person who lives now and expect some sort of, like, relatively objective response, because we cannot conceptualize what the shape of a human might be in 5 billion plus years. It's just skin.
So, like, if we had, like, a trip in the TARDIS and like, we met Cassandra face to face, we might have the same reaction. We wouldn't be wrong necessarily for having that reaction, but, like, if you view it as a member of the audience or as the Doctor who, like, has a wider scope and, like, a wider understanding of, this is just the thing that will happen eventually.
First of all, that was a mistake, and he recognized that that was a mistake. When Rose turns, finally, to run out of the room, it pans in on his face, and you see the moment of realization where he's like, oh, you know, maybe I shouldn't have done this. You know, perhaps I should have taken her somewhere else. I shouldn't have let her goad me into this.
But I didn't watch the episode. I just have a question. Did Rose request to see the end of Earth?
No.
Doctor originally took her to the year 22nd century, and she said, oh, that's a bit rubbish, isn't it? And he kept upping it, like, oh, the new Roman Empire, and she was like, that's rubbish.
And, like, she obviously did not know what she was getting into when she asked that, just like she didn't know what she was getting into when she went with him in the first place, because in that same argument where she's like, tell me what your name is, tell me who you are, tell me where we are, or where you're from, or anything, he has no answers to offer her. And you can see that she's going through the motions of realizing that, like, she's basically run off with a stranger and she is a child and now she doesn't know how to get home. And the only thing that can placate her is the Doctor letting her call her mother. That's how that culminates, which is another reason why that relationship keeps swinging back and forth between, like, potential relationship partner, friend, and potential lover.
Which is also another reason maybe why skipping this was a mistake, and, like, why I would absolutely not recommend that someone skip this episode if they were watching through series 1 for the first time.
Defining the relationship.
It introduces a lot of the key aspects of the show. It introduces, like, the psychic paper. I feel like it was used by Davis a lot more than the other two showrunners.
Moffat used it occasionally, and Chibnall uses it even more occasionally. You need early on in your viewing of this show, you need that moment of, I can let you call your mom, so that you avoid the terrible, terrible stranger danger implications.
I like that he gets really frustrated as well as her asking very basic questions, because I don't think he's used to people asking him stuff about his past or his life.
Rose is the first person he's had, like, a significant relationship with in a long time to ask those questions.
He's probably been alone for a while.
Yeah. I mean, how long was he the War Doctor? It must have been, we don't know. So he must have been, like, the War Doctor for hundreds of years.
When he regenerates, he generates into a terrible Photoshop of John Hurt's younger face. Then he gets older. He does die of old age. It's not entirely clear why the War Doctor regenerates. I think it's something to do with him being old. Or...
he just dies of old age from what I've heard.
To briefly talk more about that scene where, like, Rose gets overwhelmed and leaves, like, we pointed out that the use of Tainted Love as the background music, it's a really good choice. The lyrics actually, like, reflect Rose's, like, headspace in that moment. It's like, I've got to run away. I've got to get away. It's too much.
I don't think it's actually dated that badly, because those two songs I think are still played very often.
No, it's funny.
Like, if those songs were popular in 2005 and they were in that episode being played in the year 5 billion, would be a bit... It would make it feel very in the past of its time, I think.
But I think one of the funny things about the use of Toxic is that it managed to date the show at one point, and then it's managed to turn around again and make it timeless. So it's kind of done the random full circle of, because that song's completely in the cultural zeitgeist at this point.
That happens a couple of times with these shows. It's kind of hilarious. And the fact that Nine just lets her burn to a crisp by, like, spending a minute, like, staring dramatically.
All the blades were going so slow, and he just stood there and
he briefly just looked when
and then he decided now it's time to run. And it's like,
I think what they're trying to imply is that there wasn't enough time for him to just go back and find somebody who won't burn to death because of the heat rise. Because the editing direction make it so slow and dramatic, it makes it seem like the Doctor just let this person die for absolutely no reason.
Or maybe it's
Literally.
supposed to be like Dragon Ball Z, like they're abusing cinematic time. This show doesn't have a history of doing that, so I don't know.
My whole thing is, if wood can just catch on fire, shouldn't his clothes be catching on fire too?
You would think.
His skin should be boiling at that point.
His propellers are cooling him down.
I do like a little like species identification device thing that she has that has like plants active inside of it. It's like you can tell the technology is also plant-based. That was neat.
I just didn't like the weird breath bit. She was like, "Oh, how intimate," and I was like, "That's gross. You need to cut it out. You can stop it."
Yeah, the episode where the Doctor wants a tree.
You two go and pollinate.
No, she was like, "Your wife, your lover, your concubine."
That was a good one.
Trees have friends. Do they have friends? I guess not.
Prostitute also.
He could have literally shown up with anyone, and there would be no implication that that would be someone who he was like sexually involved with in any context. But nope. Apparently, he showed up with Rose, and it was like wife, lover, prostitute, concubine, anything, anything.
See, she's a tree and they're mammals, so she makes a lot of assumptions. She's secretly mammal racist.
I'm probably my best friend across America, and is a woman. And our relationship was basically we were brother and sister. We were married at one point. I mean, they just assumed we were together because we were traveling together and we were a man and a woman. Where, like you said, they would not make the same implication if we were both men or both women.
Also, I just want to say,
Dumb.
if the Doctor did get with the tree lady, he would have so many splinters.
Oh.
I didn't need to visualize that.
Imagine the Doctor picking him out after.
Nick, Rule 34. There's something about that out there somewhere.
Don't mention it. Never mention that again.
Internally, she's all flowery instead of splintered.
It's a realistic show, practically a documentary.
If we are talking about tree people sex, I think we need to move on.